United Nations Secretary-General and other world leaders have called for restraint in the Middle East after what's believed to have been an Israeli attack on Iran overnight. US officials say Israel was responsible for a missile strike. The Israeli government hasn't officially commented. Iran says the attack didn't cause any damage and indicated there would be no retaliation. There were reports of explosions in Syria, Iraq and most significantly in Iran, in the province of Isfahan in the middle of the country. The area is home to an airbase and several nuclear sites as well as a missile factory. US officials called it an Israeli missile strike. Iranian media said 3 small drones were involved. In a moment, we'll hear from our North America editor Sarah Smith in Washington and our chief international correspondent Lisa Sett. First, though, let's hear from Lucy Williamson in Jerusalem.
Well, there are reports tonight that Israel's defense minister has been having conversations with his US counterpart. There's obviously been a lot of pressure from Israel's allies to contain this crisis. And the sense here tonight is that both Israel and Iran may be looking for a way to avoid escalating it. But this is the Middle East's most dangerous conflict. And this crisis has changed calculations on both sides.
A message not of war, but of warning. That Israel could also strike its enemy at home if it wanted. After threatening a harsh and massive response to the smallest incursion, Iran has downplayed this morning's strike. Its president didn't mention it once in his speech today. And this is the situation in Isfahan, as shown on Iranian TV. The message: nothing to see here.
Other than that, nothing has happened. Everything is back to normal.
Israel was divided over how to respond to Iran's barrage last weekend. The judgment of one far-right cabinet minister this morning: lame. And in Jerusalem's main market today, many others were disappointed.
When a bully comes to you, we're going to respond to the bully with restraint. So the bully's just going to come back harder and harder and harder. But if you want to take down a bully, you've got to take down with force.
I expected more, to be quite honest. I think more would have been even justified, considering they sent 300 rockets to kill so many people.
I think that we're losing. We're losing the war with Hamas, we're losing the war with Hezbollah, we're losing the war with Iran. We're losing, and it's a pity. We have so much strength, but we're afraid to use it.
Last weekend, Iran fired more than 300 drones and missiles towards Israel. Punishment, it said, for the assassination of a senior commander in Syria earlier this month. All but a handful were shot down before hitting Israeli soil. This missile fuel tank pulled by Israel's army from the Dead Sea. Israel's allies urged it to take the win and avoid escalating the conflict.
We're committed to Israel's security. We're also committed to de-escalating, to trying to bring this tension to a close.
This strike and Iran's muted response to it suggests both sides are keen to step back from this conflict. But their direct confrontation last weekend has left them in a new, more dangerous position. The immediate risk may be cooling, but from where they stand now, it's a shorter route to war. One analyst says there's a lesson for the future in Iran deciding to act, even when it knew Israel would respond.
They considered it and they took it into account and they decided to do it. So there is a change in the way that they are thinking. And therefore, I have to take into account that in the future, they will be doing the same things. And this is the big question, because Israel is not going to stop attacking any arms that are coming across the Iraqi-Syrian border.
Iran today avoided blaming Israel directly, even as crowds called for its destruction after Friday prayers. But Israel is already fighting Iran-backed groups across the region. Even if this crisis is subsiding, the sparks that triggered it will not. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, our North America editor is Sarah Smith. Sarah, President Biden, of course, had urged restraint. What's being said in Washington tonight?
Well, interestingly, President Biden and those around him are very deliberately saying almost nothing about this today, except to confirm that the US wasn't involved in any military operations. And that's because amid the relief there is here that the Israeli response was relatively small scale, they don't want to fan the flames of anything by statements or commentary that's coming out of here. But you're right, President Biden had urged Israel to take the win, i.e. the massive failure of Iran's attack on them last weekend, and not to retaliate. And of course, as we saw, Israel didn't do that. There's growing frustration here, it has to be said, about Israel's tactics. Not just this attack on Iran, but also what's been happening in Gaza is causing mounting concern, but there's limited success that America has had in trying to limit Israel's operations there. I mean, the US does remain Israel's biggest backer by far, militarily, diplomatically and even financially. This weekend the Congress is going to vote on over $26 billion of aid that, to be sent to Israel, but it doesn't seem to buy them as much influence as the White House would ideally like.
All right, Sarah, thank you. And let's get the thoughts of our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, who is here with me. And we heard Iran indicated there would be no retaliation for this. Do we take that at face value?
For now, this round seems to be over. Both sides believe they have sent a very clear signal to their arch enemy that if they strike, there'll be a heavy price to pay. In other words, they believe they have re-established deterrence. For Iran, this limited strike, which Israel hasn't officially acknowledged, gave them vital political space, that they could say nothing happened, that they don't have to invoke that rule, that new rule, that when Israel strikes, Iran will hit back immediately and hard. For Israel, this limited strike seems, as we've been hearing, to be a warning salvo, that Israel can and will strike the beating heart of Iran, the central province of Isfahan, which is home to a nuclear facility, a major airbase, an industrial heartland, which produces the drones and missiles which Iran sent into Israel by the hundreds last Sunday. So behind Iran's dismissal, even mockery of what happened this morning, there's still much for Iran to worry about. And as we've been hearing, the roots of this confrontation aren't over. The grief has caused a war. Iran's network of proxies, armed militias across the region. And of course, what has been a decades-long hostility between these regional rivals. So tonight, there is a palpable sense of relief in the region, in capitals, including London. No one wants an all-out war. But tonight, no one can say for certain what will happen next.